The Grayson mansion stood tall on the edge of the city, surrounded by long iron gates and gardens that stretched farther than most people could walk in a day. From the outside, it looked like a palace from a dream. Grand pillars, marble floors, and chandeliers that sparkled like stars. But inside, it was cold, silent, and lifeless. The air carried no laughter, no warmth, no sign of joy. It was a place filled with riches, but starved of love. In one of the many rooms of that enormous house lived Adrian Grayson, the only son of the billionaire who owned everything yet had nothing that truly mattered. Adrian had been born blind. Since the day he entered the world, he had never seen light, color, or even his father's face. To him, the world existed through sound and touch, the soft brushing of wind through the curtains, the gentle hum of the piano downstairs, and the quiet echo of footsteps in the long, empty hallways. His father, Mr. Grayson, loved him deeply, but was rarely home. He spent most of his time traveling the world, searching for doctors who promised impossible cures. He paid millions for treatments, surgeries, and specialists, but every time he returned, it was with disappointment in his eyes and more silence in the house. The servants cared for Adrian, but they moved like ghosts, quiet, polite, and distant. No one spoke to him beyond what was necessary. The mansion was full of people, yet he was completely alone. Adrian's world was made of sounds, the ticking of the clock, the whisper of leaves outside, and the faint music from the piano he had learned to play by memory. He would sit by the open window, feeling the warmth of the sun on his face and imagining what light must look like. Sometimes he thought of his father and wished he would stay home, even for a single day, just to talk, just to listen. But Mr. Grayson's footsteps were rare in that house. Only his voice echoed briefly through phone calls and distant instructions to the staff. Adrian's days blended into one another, quiet and predictable, until one afternoon something changed. It began with a sound he had never heard before, a laugh. Not the soft, practiced laughter of servants or guests, but something free, bright, and alive. It came from the garden below his window, sharp and cheerful against the still air. Adrian tilted his head toward the sound, his ears alert. It was followed by a woman's voice, kind and gentle, scolding softly, "Lily, be careful. Don't step on the flowers." The little girl's laughter returned, louder this time, unbothered by the warning. Adrian felt something stir inside him, something he couldn't name, curiosity. He stood slowly and traced his hand along the wall, making his way to the garden door with careful steps. The air outside was warm, carrying the smell of freshly cut grass and the sweet scent of flowers. He walked slowly, guided by sound. The laughter was close now. He stopped near the stone path and said softly, "Who's there?" For a moment, there was silence. Then a small, surprised voice replied, "I'm Lily. Who are you?" Adrian smiled slightly. "I'm Adrian. I live here," the girl gasped. "You live in this huge house? Wow, it looks like a castle." Adrian chuckled under his breath. "I wouldn't know," he said quietly. "I've never seen it." There was a pause, and then Lily's voice softened. "You mean, you're blind?" He nodded, his hand brushing against the nearest bush. "Yes, but I can hear things. You sound like you're smiling." Lily giggled. "I am. You're funny." Her laughter filled the garden again, and Adrian found himself smiling without realizing it. He hadn't talked to someone his age in years. She began describing the garden to him, the tall roses that touched her shoulders, the butterflies that looked like flying colors, and the sky that, according to her, looked like a giant blue blanket. He listened quietly, his imagination painting the world she described. Her words made the air around him feel brighter, more alive. When her mother called her to leave, Lily promised she would come again the next day. Adrian stood there long after she left, his heart lighter than it had been in a long time. That night, as he lay in bed, he couldn't sleep. He replayed her laughter in his mind, the sound echoing through the stillness of his room. It was strange how just one voice, one person, could make him feel as though he wasn't trapped in darkness anymore. For the first time in years, Adrian wasn't waiting for his father to return, or a doctor to deliver a miracle. He was waiting for morning to hear that bright, honest laugh again. What he didn't know was that the girl who had entered his silent world so innocently would soon change his life forever. From the moment Lily stepped into Adrian's quiet world, everything began to change. She was unlike anyone he had ever met. Most people spoke to him slowly, with the same cautious tone one would use for a fragile object, as if blindness made him breakable. But Lily was different. She talked fast, laughed easily, and never once sounded sorry for him. To her, Adrian wasn't the blind boy in the big mansion. He was just Adrian, a boy who liked stories and music, and wanted to know what the world looked like. She had a way of describing things that made them come alive in his mind. "The sky looks like a big ocean today," she would say, her voice full of wonder, but without waves, just light everywhere. She would tell him about the flowers bending in the wind, about bees that looked like tiny yellow clouds, and how the sunlight made everything sparkle, as if the world was covered in stars. Adrian would sit beside her, listening quietly, smiling as her words painted colors in his imagination. Her voice made him see the world in ways no doctor ever could. Day after day, their friendship grew. Lily came to the mansion whenever her mother worked in the garden. She would sneak away after finishing her chores, running down the stone path to the bench where Adrian always waited. She brought him small treasures. She found smooth pebbles from the stream, feathers that shimmered in the light, and once, a leaf shaped like a heart. "This one is lucky," she had said, placing it in his hand. "Keep it safe." Adrian had smiled and tucked it in his pocket, feeling the soft edges between his fingers. Each gift carried a piece of the outside world, a world he could touch and imagine, even if he couldn't see it. They spent hours together, talking about everything. Lily told him stories about her small home, about her mother who worked hard every day, and about the stars she liked to watch from her window at night. Adrian, in return, told her about the sounds he loved, the piano in the hall, the rustle of the trees, the way the rain felt like tiny drums on the roof. He also shared stories his father used to tell him before the world grew quiet around them. Lily listened with wide eyes, sometimes gasping, sometimes laughing, always making him feel like his words mattered. For the first time in his life, Adrian didn't feel invisible. Even though he couldn't see her face, he felt her kindness in every word and every laugh. But behind his smile, there was a quiet fear. His father, Mr. Grayson, had always been strict about who came near his son. "People don't always mean well," he would say. "Some just want to take advantage." Adrian knew that if his father found out about Lily, he would forbid her from visiting. Mr. Grayson wanted his son to live safely, protected from harm, but his idea of safety was a life behind walls. And Adrian had lived behind those walls for far too long. He couldn't let his father take this away. So he said nothing. Every time he heard the sound of Mr. Grayson's car approaching the gates, he would ask Lily to leave quickly. She always nodded, understanding, her little footsteps disappearing down the path before the door opened. Still, each goodbye felt heavier than the last. Adrian didn't want to lose her, not when she was the only spark of light in his dark world. He tried not to think about it, but sometimes at night, he would sit awake, holding the heart-shaped leaf she had given him, wondering how long their secret could last. The mansion that once felt empty now felt alive because of her laughter. The garden had become their world, a place filled with stories, sounds, and friendship. But every moment of joy carried a shadow of fear, because secrets, no matter how innocent, always have a way of being discovered. One afternoon, while they were sitting near the fountain, Lily said something that made Adrian pause. "You know," she whispered, "I think you see more than most people." He laughed softly. How could that be? I've never seen anything at all. But Lily shook her head. You listen. You feel. You imagine. Most people don't really see anything, even with their eyes open. Her words stayed with him long after she left that day. For the first time, he didn't think of his blindness as something broken. He thought of it as another way of seeing. As days turned into weeks, their bond deepened, their secret friendship becoming the brightest part of both their lives. Yet in the back of Adrian's mind, he could sense a storm, forming a feeling that something would soon test everything they had found together. The walls of the mansion had ears, and secrets had a way of slipping through cracks. He didn't know when or how, but he knew one thing for sure. His father ever learned about Lily, the laughter that filled his garden would be silenced, and the darkness might return once more. The rain had been falling all afternoon, soft and steady against the tall windows of the Grayson mansion. The air smelled of wet earth and flowers, and the sound of water dripping from the roof filled the silence between Adrian and Lily. They sat together in his room, the dim glow of a small lamp casting long shadows on the floor. Adrian had always loved the sound of rain. It reminded him of peace, of something gentle in a world that often felt too large and empty. But today, there was something different in the air, an odd stillness, as if the house itself was waiting for something to happen. Lily sat by the window, tracing her fingers over the cold glass, watching the raindrops race down. She turned her head toward Adrian, who was smiling faintly as he listened to the storm. You never open your curtains, she said suddenly, her voice curious. Don't you want to feel the sunlight when it's not raining? Adrian tilted his head, a little surprised by her question. Father says the light would hurt my eyes, he replied softly. The doctors told him it wouldn't help me anyway. Lily frowned. But don't you ever wonder what it looks like? He hesitated for a moment, then said quietly, every day. Without saying another word, Lily stood and walked to the window. The heavy curtains, always drawn closed, looked dark and dusty. She reached for the fabric and hesitated, glancing back at Adrian. May I? She asked gently. He didn't stop her. Slowly, she pulled the curtains open. A thin beam of light slipped into the room, slicing through the gray air. It wasn't harsh or blinding, just a soft golden line that seemed to carry warmth with it. It fell across Adrian's face. He flinched at once, covering his eyes with his hand. It hurts, he gasped. Lily froze, panic rising in her chest. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. But before she could finish, Adrian lowered his hand slightly, his expression changing. Wait, he whispered. I can see something. Lily blinked, unsure if she heard him right. See something? She asked carefully. He nodded slowly, tears welling in his eyes. Light, he said, almost in disbelief. I can see light. For a long moment, the two of them sat frozen in silence, listening only to the soft patter of rain outside. Adrian's breathing was unsteady, his voice trembling. I thought I couldn't see anything, he said, his tone breaking between awe and fear. All my life they told me I would never see, but I can feel it bright, soft. It's real. Lily's heart raced. Adrian, that means… I don't know what it means, he interrupted, his voice shaking, but it's something. She didn't know what to do, but she could feel the weight of what had just happened. It was like witnessing a miracle in the middle of an ordinary day. That evening, when her mother came to collect her, Lily could barely hold back her excitement. Mama, Adrian saw light. She blurted out, her words tumbling over each other. Her mother frowned, unsure if she had heard correctly. What do you mean, dear? He saw it. I opened the curtains, and when the sunlight touched his face, he said he could see it. Lily's eyes sparkled with hope, but her mother hesitated, torn between disbelief and worry. We shouldn't say anything yet, she murmured, her voice low. If we're wrong, it will only bring pain. But Lily shook her head. It's true. I saw his face, Mama. He wasn't pretending. Later that night, after much hesitation, her mother decided to tell Mr. Grayson. The billionaire was sitting in his study when the two of them arrived, his face tired and unreadable under the soft light of the lamp. "Mr. Grayson," Lily's mother began carefully, "there's something you need to know. It's about your son." He looked up sharply, his expression tense. "What about Adrian?" Before she could speak, Lily stepped forward, her small hands clutching her dress nervously. "He saw the light, sir," she said in a trembling voice. "Just a little, but he did." The room fell silent. Mr. Grayson stared at her, confusion clouding his face. "That's impossible," he said finally. "The doctors told me he would never," but he stopped mid-sentence when he saw the sincerity in her eyes. She wasn't lying. She was just a child speaking the truth she believed. For the first time in years, something flickered in Mr. Grayson's eyes, hope, faint but undeniable. He stood and walked toward the hallway, his thoughts racing. "No doctor ever told me this," he said quietly, half to himself. "They said his blindness was permanent." He turned back to them, his voice trembling. "If there's even a small chance, we have to try." That night, for the first time in years, he called a specialist, his hands shaking as he spoke. When he went to Adrian's room later, he found his son sitting by the window, facing the faint glow of the moon through the half-open curtains. Mr. Grayson's voice was soft, filled with something rare. "Tomorrow, we'll see what's truly possible." Adrian smiled faintly, his face lit by that pale light he could now just barely see. And for the first time, the mansion that had lived in shadows seemed to breathe with hope. The following morning, the Grayson mansion buzzed with quiet hope, something it hadn't felt in years. Mr. Grayson had wasted no time within hours of hearing the news. He arranged for Adrian to be seen by the best specialists in the city. 4 days, doctors came and went, running test after test, examining his eyes under bright lights and complex machines. Adrian sat through it all with patience, his small hands gripping the arm of the chair, while Lily and her mother waited just outside the room. The tests felt endless, but finally, the results came in. One of the doctors looked at Mr. Grayson and said words he had never thought he would hear. "Your son's blindness is not complete. His optic nerves are weak but not dead. With surgery and therapy, there's a real chance he could recover some vision." For a long moment, Mr. Grayson didn't speak. The weight of those words seemed too heavy to process. He looked toward his son, sitting quietly by the window, unaware that his entire life was about to change. When he finally found his voice, it was shaky, full of disbelief and emotion. "You mean, he might see again?" The doctor nodded. "Yes, it will take time and care, but it's possible." When Mr. Grayson stepped out to the waiting area, Lily jumped up, her eyes wide with hope. "What did they say?" she asked eagerly. He looked at her, his eyes wet, and smiled through the tears he had been holding back for years. "You were right, Lily," he said softly. "There's still light in his eyes." He turned to her mother, grasping her hands. "I don't know how to thank you. I spent years and millions searching for answers, and it took a child's heart to find the truth." But Lily, ever humble, shook her head. "I didn't heal him, sir. He just needed someone to help him see the light that was already there." Mr. Grayson was speechless. Her words were simple, but struck deep, reminding him of how blind he himself had been, not to sight, but to love, to hope, to the small miracles that life often hides in ordinary moments. Within a week, Adrian began treatment. The doctors decided to perform a delicate surgery, followed by months of vision therapy. The operation was long and exhausting, and though it went well, the recovery was slow. 4 weeks, his eyes were covered in bandages to protect them. The mansion was filled with both tension and faith. Every day, Lily visited him, her voice cheerful and full of color, describing everything around them so vividly that Adrian felt like he could already see it. "The sky looks like someone spilled blue paint everywhere," she would say. and the roses in the garden are red, like the sound of a happy song." Adrian listened, smiling, letting her words form pictures in his mind. Her descriptions became his guide, her laughter his comfort. Mr. Grayson watched quietly from afar, realizing how deeply this small girl had changed both his and his son's lives. As the weeks turned into months, small changes began to happen. Adrian started noticing faint shadows through the bandages, soft glimmers of light breaking through the darkness. Each time he mentioned it, Lily clapped her hands with excitement. "That's the world waving hello to you," she would tease. Day by day, he could sense more light shifting, outlines moving, colors blending. And each day, Lily stayed by his side, helping him understand what he was seeing. When the sun shone through the window, she would whisper, "That's gold, Adrian. That's what warmth looks like." When evening came and the stars appeared, she told him, "Those are tiny lights in the sky like candles the universe forgot to blow out." Her words filled his heart with wonder, her friendship with courage. Then came the day everyone had been waiting for, the day the bandages would come off. The morning air felt heavy with anticipation. The doctor worked carefully, unwinding the layers of white cloth that had hidden Adrian's eyes for so long. Lily stood beside his bed, her small hands clutching his. Mr. Grayson stood behind them, holding his breath. The final strip fell away, and light flooded in. Adrian gasped softly, blinking rapidly as tears welled up. The light hurt at first, just as it had that day by the window, but then something changed. Slowly, shapes began to form, fuzzy at first, then clearer. He could see movement, colors, and then a face. A small face framed with golden hair, eyes shining brighter than any light he had ever imagined. "Lily," he whispered. She laughed through her tears, her voice trembling with joy. "Yes, it's me." Mr. Grayson turned away, tears spilling down his cheeks as he pressed a hand over his mouth. Adrian's trembling fingers reached forward and touched Lily's face as if to confirm it was real. "You're smiling," he said softly. "I can see you." Lily nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "I told you, Adrian, the light was always there." The doctor smiled quietly, and even the nurse wiped her eyes. The mansion that had once felt silent now filled with laughter, with the sound of hope and new beginnings. And as sunlight streamed through the open window, Adrian sat up, staring in wonder at the world that had finally revealed itself, his first sight, his first sunrise, in the face of the friend who helped him find both. Months had passed since the day Adrian's bandages were removed, and the Grayson mansion had changed in ways no one could have imagined. The once quiet halls that echoed only with footsteps and the ticking of clocks were now filled with laughter, music, and the soft hum of life. Adrian could see now, not perfectly, but enough to fill his heart with a kind of wonder he had never known before. He often woke up early just to watch the sunlight pour through the windows, fascinated by how it danced across the floor in shades of gold. Colors amazed him: the red of roses, the blue of the sky, the green of leaves swaying gently in the wind. Everything felt new, every sound and sight a gift he never thought he'd have. Lily had become his constant companion. The two of them spent nearly every day in the garden, which had once been just a space of sound and scent for Adrian, but was now a world of beauty and color. They would chase butterflies, laugh at how fast they moved, and sit under the big oak tree sharing stories about their dreams. Lily would bring her old storybooks, reading them aloud while Adrian listened with a smile, his eyes tracing the shapes of letters he was still learning to recognize. It wasn't always easy, his sight was still fragile, and sometimes the light felt too bright, but he didn't mind. Every small thing he could see felt like a miracle. Mr. Grayson had changed too. The man who once buried himself in meetings and phone calls now came home early just to be with his son. Every evening, he would find Adrian and Lily sitting in the garden, their laughter floating through the open windows. He often stood quietly by the doorway, watching his son's face light up with joy. That smile, once so rare, was worth more than all his money, all his business successes. For years, he had tried to buy miracles with wealth. But now he understood that miracles were never bought. They were found in people, in moments of kindness and love. Sometimes he would join them, sitting on the bench, while Lily told one of her stories, or Adrian described what he could now see. He didn't say much, but his eyes always glistened with emotion. The mansion, once cold and lifeless, now breathed warmth. The servants smiled more, the air felt lighter, and even the garden seemed to bloom brighter, as if it too felt the happiness that had returned to the house. One evening, as the sun began to set and painted the sky in soft shades of gold and orange, Adrian and Lily sat together near the fountain. The wind was gentle, carrying the scent of flowers, and the water shimmered in the fading light. Adrian watched the scene quietly, his heart full. "You know," he said after a moment, his voice calm but filled with meaning. "You didn't just help me see the world, Lily." She turned to him, curious, her brown hair glowing in the sunlight. "What do you mean?" she asked softly. Adrian smiled, looking at her with eyes that still seemed amazed by everything they could now take in. "You helped me see life," he said. "Before you came, I thought my world was just darkness, but you showed me that there's more to seeing than using your eyes. You made me believe in hope." Lily looked at him for a long moment, her eyes glistening with tears she didn't want him to see. Then she smiled, turning her gaze toward the horizon. "Sometimes," she said gently, "you don't need money to make a miracle. Just kindness." The words hung in the air like music, soft and true. Adrian felt a lump form in his throat as he looked at her, realizing how much she had changed his life. She wasn't rich or powerful, but she carried something greater, a heart that could see what others could not. He reached out and held her hand, feeling the warmth of her fingers, and whispered, "Thank you for helping me find my light." She squeezed his hand back, smiling through her tears, as the last rays of sunlight faded behind the hills. The wind picked up, swirling gently through the garden. It carried Lily's laughter bright and full of life through the air, weaving it with the soft sound of the fountain. From one of the windows, Mr. Grayson stood watching, his heart full. The mansion, once a silent shell of marble and gold, now felt like a home. It wasn't the wealth that made it so, but the love that now lived within its walls. The house that had once been filled with sorrow now echoed with the sound of joy, the sound of family. As night began to fall and stars appeared in the sky, Adrian looked up and smiled, his heart calm and full. He had once lived in darkness, but now he saw everything that truly mattered: the light of friendship, the power of kindness, and the quiet miracle of being loved.